Welcome everyone to the second episode of Less Boring Adventures. On this episode we are going to the seaside town of Queenscliff, and to get there we're going to be taking the train all the way to Geelong. A scenic journey where you'll get to see wastelands, forests, industrial wastelands, and Geelong, until eventually arrive at Geelong Station, a beautiful station down in Geelong itself, which is evident by the name. Unfortunately, I got here a bit late and missed the bus, but it did give me time to point at a sign and show you where we're going to go when the bus arrives. After being stared at by the denizens of the station for pointing at a sign very slowly a number of times while filming myself, I ended up walking through the park here. As you can see that veranda over there was a nice man screaming while eating a full Woolworths chicken, which was good to see at 9 a.m. in the morning. But there's a lot of beautiful things to see in Geelong, even on a short little visit like this. There's the beautiful art gallery, which can be found in the park, and just around the corner is the building where the information centre can be found, which is a perfect old Victorian building, but alongside those, there's also this brutalist building not far from the station. I believe this is one of the state government buildings. Look at that thing. After grabbing an espresso, it was time to go back to the station and time to catch the bus to Queenscliff. I didn't actually film any of the bus ride for some reason, but I can tell you what I saw. The first part of the Bellarine Peninsula leaving Geelong is quite modern, with lots of tourist trap attractions such as old mini-putt golf courses and water parks. And the rest of it, leading up to Queenscliff, starts to change a lot. It's beautiful scenery, and Queenscliff itself is a really beautiful place. Look at the size of that thing. It's massive. I arrived at the local campground to find it full of caravans and right next to a footy oval where a game was being played, pretty much right next to the park. And I was given the location of my campsite. After a literal nightmare putting together the tent, I decided it was time to explore the town and seek out one of the many lighthouses that you can see pretty much from anywhere within the town. There's quite a few of them here. Queenscliff itself, beautiful old Victorian place, lots of beautiful buildings to see, and a wonderful pie shop, but to my horror, as I bought the pie, it was actually so heavy and full of beef that the bag completely fell apart. My pie fell on the floor. I promise I didn't eat any of the spilled pie, but the fact that I'm talking about it and bringing it up does indicate that I probably did have a couple of bites. I mean, it was a very solid pie and only one half had caved in, but anyway, I continued my adventure, because we were going to go on a long walk today, and that walk started from here, which is just by the old railway station, where the blues train often leaves. I got my first look at Swan Bay, which is the inlet that surrounds the town, and also caught sight of the Navy base, which is just across the water here, taking up the whole of that island over there. You have to go across this wacky bridge to get there, and the whole thing's closed off unless you pay for a golf course membership, because there is a golf course there. And the funny thing is, the bridge to this island is literally right at the end of a suburban street. But you know what? I would want them here because the Joker was in town. Going right past the museum, it was about time for me to explain exactly who I am and what I was doing here. I was planning on walking all the way from Queenscliff to Point Lonsdale, taking a bit of a bushwalk, with a few stops along the way, and, well, the first thing I noticed is just how beautiful this area is. This is literally the last point at the end of Port Phillip Bay, so across there is Mornington. And look at this, I even found the cliff and another lighthouse hiding behind the bushes. But this lighthouse is a bit different. The Black Lighthouse is the lighthouse for Fort Queenscliff, which is this huge red brick complex over here, which is an active military base. Now, you're not usually allowed to go in there unless you're on a guided tour, but I bumped into one of the tour guides, and he told me that today was no exception. Based on the canons, it looks like Fort Queenscliff is mainly here to defend Queenscliff from itself, because the cannons are pointed directly at that person's house over there. Now, part of the reason I wanted to come to Queenscliff is to go up this lookout tower, which looks as if it's a public thing that you can enter, and that's what Google Maps made me think, but look at this, it's all locked up, you can't even go in it, it'd be perfect to be a lookout place. So I left this white lighthouse alone, with the camping spot, the broken pie, and now the white lighthouse not having a way to go up there. I was a little bit disappointed, but I was certain that this telescope would cheer me up. Unfortunately, it was also out of order when I got to it. So far, the whole trip had been a little bit of a bummer, but it was time to walk through the bushes and make my way to Port Lonsdale. Or Point Lonsdale, one or the other, I completely forgot the name of the place. Walking through these endless bushes, I started to feel a little bit unnerved by the amount of ruins that were just lying around. Now, some of these I'm pretty sure go back to World War II, and there's quite a lot of them scattered, but the more you walk through this little path, the more and more disorienting it gets, and you're basically just on a straight path behind some buildings, but it goes for a long way, and let me tell you, it's pretty easy to lose track of where you are. So as I said before, this whole area is at the Geelong point, I suppose, of Port Phillip Bay, with a small 3-kilometre gap between here and the Mornington Peninsula on the other side. The football team that was playing Queenscliff was actually Sorrento, which is a town on the other side of the bay. They did plan at one point, or propose, to build a gigantic bridge here. Would have been the biggest suspension bridge in the world, and to be honest, I don't know why they'd actually build it, but that was part of the plan. Anyway, I kept on walking through the bushes here, continuing on the little adventure, and eventually I came across a few more ruins. But before that, I needed to go to the toilet. And I kicked myself in the shins to this day that I didn't use this one here because I didn't see another one until I got to Point Lonsdale. I also wish I brought my bathers because this is probably one of the nicest beaches that I've seen in Victoria in the 10 years I've been here. But I kept going, and eventually I found these strange little things. Now, I wasn't game enough to actually crawl through that little hole there, but look at that, there's a little staircase at the end, so I wonder what that's all about. I know what this thing is as well. But I kept on going, the bushes got a little bit more out of hand, and I was starting to wonder if I even knew where I was actually going at this stage, because it was all getting a little bit overgrown. The only thing that was really keeping me sane was the fact that I kept on passing old ladies walking down through this path, literally in the middle of the bush. But I don't know if they were real or not. I mean, they were nice enough and said good morning. Maybe I wasn't being kept sane at all. But eventually, I did find the footpath. And it was down this footpath that I came to the Lovers' Walk between Queenscliff and Point Lonsdale. And I could also see, for the first time, the target of my journey, the lighthouse that sits at the end of Point Lonsdale. I was certain at this point there'd be no more bushwalking, and it would be a fairly easy trek. So I began the walk, the Lovers' Walk, and made my way towards Point Lonsdale. Unfortunately, rumours of the bush's demise had been greatly exaggerated, so I had to go through the bush one more time in order to get to the old lighthouse. From here you could clearly see the other end of Port Phillip Bay, and the small gap between this part of the bay and that part, which I think is only 3 kilometres or so. Finally, I was getting close. The lighthouse didn't seem that far at all now, and before I knew it, I was finally there. It was possibly at that moment the nicest lighthouse I'd ever seen, and it was great to finally reach the Southern Ocean itself, which is far better than many other oceans you may hear about, including the Pacific Ocean. Down these steps there was another World War II ruin. This one, I believe, was a searchlight post that was etched into the cliff here, just in case the Germans decided to bypass Europe and come straight for us in Australia. There was also this strange little building here with this pretty useless fence. I mean, I don't know if this is going to stop anyone going inside and having a look. I mean, it worked for me, but that's because I'm a law-abiding citizen most of the time. Anyway, the walk back to Queenscliff wasn't very exciting until almost the very end, when I started to hear the sound of a train approaching me on the old train tracks. Now, this train line is out of commission, except for the blues train. I took in one last look at Swan Bay and continued the journey, which I came to the very end of, arriving back at Queenscliff's old train station, where I saw the blues train and people getting off, because the blues train leaves from there and it's one of the tourist attractions here in Queenscliff. I think it's a dinner followed by some music live on the train. That somehow the tent survived the whole journey, which I didn't really expect because of how hard it was to put it up. So I went back into town, checked out a few old houses that were for sale, and saw probably the most useless gate I've ever seen. After that, it was time to watch the football and time to eat some fish and chips before heading home in the dark. After a surprisingly comfortable sleep next to the gate in the car park, I headed back into town to wait for the bus and get a beautiful view of Queenscliff in the morning as well. Thanks everyone for watching the video. I've got a few more planned for less boring adventures. Please like and subscribe, and yeah, if you did like this video, stay tuned for more. Take care.